I want to tell you about something that happened to me a long time ago now. Something I've tried desperately to just shove into the back of my head and bury so that I don't have to think about it ever again in my life. But that's not possible. Even getting it off my chest right now to all of you guys, it will never make it go away. I am going to have to live with what I did. I was still a student at a university in my little Midwest city, studying business at this point. I was studying business because my dad wanted me to work for his company and eventually become his successor once he was old and couldn't really do the job anymore. It wasn't anything major. It was just a chain of small stores dotted around our state and the neighboring states. This must have been around 2010 or so, and let me just say that I was bored most of the time. I skipped class so often and slept in because I just didn't have the drive to put in any work. I thought that I had it all made. Why try when I can just get an easy job with my dad and not have to work hard for my money? It felt like no matter what I did, I was gonna be fine, so why do anything? Yeah, looking back, I was an idiot, and it's the worst mindset that you can ever have. It set me back pretty far in life and made the coming years so much harder than they needed to be. Anyway, moving on from my yapping, let me say that my boredom took me to a lot of places I should not have been. I did everything. I tried urbexing, extreme sports, going hunting in stupid places with barely any equipment. My friends and I even tried to make our own internet version of Jackass in our spare time, which never went anywhere. One of our videos actually got taken down, and our account banned on YouTube due to the contents of one of the videos. Basically, we decided to make our own extreme version of jousting. So instead of using a horse and a big-ass lance, we had these really shitty bicycles that we decked out, and we bought some high-powered airsoft rifles and shot each other full auto while cycling towards each other. We only got banned because we painted the airsoft rifles to look like real weapons, and YouTube would not believe us when we appealed, so that was pretty short-lived. That, and I don't think they really took too kindly to the skits of us like shitting on camera in the woods and weird stuff like that. Looking back, it was really strange. Around this time, I got really into looking on the deep web due to a recommendation from a friend. I wasn't really super tech savvy, so even him dumbing it down for me did not really help. He had to come over and basically write a text document on my computer that said, "Press this and then this, and only then can you use this." And so that's how I accessed it. He would send me funny links, and it was a little like the Wild West. It had tons of crazy stuff that you could not find anywhere else. I even used it to get some weed shipped to a house down the street that was abandoned, and it was one of the biggest rushes of my entire life. It was dry as shit, and I think the idiot who sent it mixed it with some cooking herbs, but man, I did not even care. My friends and I would also frequent gore sites on there. Think Live Leak, but on crack. That's mainly just what we used it for, thrill seeking, and as a quick dopamine hit to quell our boredom. You also have to remember that this was before the Silk Road fiasco went down, and every other link on the deep web became a fed honeypot. You could actually do and find crazy stuff and get away with it too. Drugs were mostly my thing. I never did any weird stuff, let me just clarify that. Well, fast forward until I've been using it for a few months, and my friend comes over one day and shows me this hidden forum that he found one night. It was invite only, and you had to pay a membership fee every month, so I was a little bit skeptical, but my friend promised me that it was so worth it. To explain the forum pretty simply, the forum was kind of like a treasure hunting type thing. It was like a whole entire community. People could upload a hunt and attach whatever they want and choose the difficulty themselves. They could attach pictures, cryptic clues, a cipher, a hand-drawn map, etc. And then anyone on the forum at all who had a membership was welcome to attempt to find the treasure. The treasure could be anything, good or bad, and that made it really exciting. It was like a mystery box, but you had to find it yourself. There was also such a massive variety of tasks to attempt to find the treasures that, I don't know, it really scratched an itch that I wasn't even aware that I even had. I did this a few times with a friend who introduced me to the community at first, before eventually tackling one on my own. The first time, it was like a hidden language that you had to crack. like some Cicada 3301 stuff if anyone really remembers that. They gave you a code, and you had to crack the language, and then use that to discover other things. It was insanely fun. It took us around a month, I think, with some help from other posters on the forum. It was actually pretty close by to my city, which felt so surreal to me. It seemed insane that there were so many people on this forum, like really close by. Anyway, we found this little treasure box buried out in the middle of some desert somewhere, and it was filled to the brim with bottle caps that you can get from glass Coke bottles. Some of them were really old and weathered. It made me laugh, thinking of some Fallout nerd assembling this and thinking it was the funniest prize ever. The second time we attempted a challenge, I don't recall it being that difficult, but I remember this one because it really pissed me off. We had to follow some really horribly drawn in crayon treasure map and work out where the place was based on landmarks and some other limited information that we were given that I don't really remember right now. We eventually ended up traveling a few states over to some woods nearby to a graveyard. Like a complete and total idiot, I forgot to bring a shovel with me, but from the clues, it seemed like the treasure was not buried too deep. So there I am, in some random dirt, nearby to a graveyard, using my fingernails and jamming my hands into the ground. And what happens? I start to smell something so horrible. I thought it was just the disturbed earth at first, like maybe there was something rotting underneath. Worst case scenario, maybe there were some bones, maybe it was an unmarked grave. That was until I caught sight of my fingernails and the fact that I had just sunk them into literal dog shit. I didn't know how old it was, but the second that my fingernails sunk in, the smell got 10 times worse. I threw up basically on the spot, and all I had to clean my fingers until I got back home was a bottle of Dasani, which couldn't even get the dog shit out from underneath my fingernails. I had to smell it the whole way back. That was the worst drive of my entire life. I was prepared to call it quits over that right on the spot. I mean, it was a fun idea, but I couldn't go through that again. It was horrible. I was thinking of deleting my account and canceling my membership. But my friend convinced me to let him scout the forums and pick a few for me to do. He argued that he'd been on it longer, so he kind of knew which ones were good and which ones smelled. So I relented and I agreed, and I let him. So we did a few more together, which were actually quite fun. It's a bit too long to type them all out here though. And then he picked out another one for me. Unfortunately, for this last one, he was busy with some midterms that I was not even bothering with, and so after doing a lot of the legwork together and solving the puzzle, I had to drive to the spot and claim the prize for myself. This is where things got really bad. I can't even remember what the puzzle was that we had to solve anymore. All I remember is that someone went to some great lengths to set this up, and it involved us first finding a key before discovering where the key opened. I was eventually directed to an abandoned storage unit in a warehouse that had been abandoned for years. This place was also like a 6-hour drive away, so it would be an entire day's worth of a commitment. Still, I really wanted to see it through, and so I made the drive out there. I think I should have known that something was sketchy the second that I got out there, the second that I got out of the car. There was nothing around for a good long while. The storage place may as well have been in the middle of nowhere. Still though, I made the drive out there pretty early in the morning, so there was still plenty of light, which made me a lot less scared. I brought a flashlight with me and managed to find my way inside. The smell just hit me within seconds. It smelled like someone had been scrubbing the floor with bleach, like all day long. It was actually pretty hard to breathe, and I had to use my t-shirt to cover up my mouth and my nose for a little while. I'm going to try and speed this up a little, since I know I've rambled on for a while. I stumbled around in the near dark for quite a while. Even with a flashlight, it was not easy, and I kept getting lost in all of the little storage rooms. But I eventually came across a much bigger room that was locked with a padlock and some chains. Jackpot. This had to be the thing that the key opened up. I noticed that before I even unlocked the door, that I could hear a noise coming from inside. It sounded like a generator running. This made me feel both excited for the treasure that I was about to find, and really anxious all at the same time. I used the key and managed to unlock it, and the second that I stepped inside, my heart just sank all the way to my ass, and I shat it out into my pants. The room was pitch black, completely pitch black. All of the windows had been blacked out, using some kind of sheet metal to block them, and the sheet metal was bolted in. Not everything was pitch black though. I realized that once I panned around the room entirely. Because in the middle of the room, there were 2 spotlights set up on either side, and they were pointing at something. They were aimed at a chair right in the center of the room. And it makes me feel sick to remember, but there was a man in that chair. He was tied to it, not even with rope. His arms were handcuffed, and his arms and legs were chained both to the chair and to something on the floor. It was like one of those metal half-circle things that you can attach things to. I don't remember the name of it. I can't see the man's face. He has a hood over it, and so I cannot make out any features. I can see that he's breathing from his chest going up and down, but he's only breathing very faintly. I think he was actually asleep at this point, but that's only a guess. I let out a shout and immediately turned to run out of the room. I only stopped because I heard a voice coming over the speakers that were in that room, and I also heard the man wake up and start screaming. I immediately turned back. I was trying to tell him to calm down and that everything would be okay, that I was going straight to the police to get him some help, and then I heard that voice over the speaker once again. I don't even know where the speaker was set up. I couldn't actually see it anywhere. It must have been hidden. Then I caught a glimpse of something else that was in the room. I could see it flash every so often. That's why it caught my eye. There was a light, a blinking red light set up somewhere behind the man's chair. I'm not sure if there were more anywhere else around the room. I found out later that the room I was in, both me and the man, we were being recorded, live streamed to somewhere on the internet. I have no idea where to. The voice is all garbled and is being scrambled using some horrible software that makes the voice deeper and sound less like the person. They are trying to talk to me while the man in the chair is squirming and trying to break out, but the chair will not budge even an inch. He's trying to rock back and forth, but the chair is just not moving. I was panicked and asking what the hell was going on, and they told me to shut up so that they could explain. They explained the recording, and then they gave me an ultimatum. They told me that I was free to let the man go and escape with him, that I didn't have to take part in anything. They told me if I did this, that they would immediately contact the police and implicate me in the abduction and torture of the man. That with the recordings that they have of me, the key on my possession, and the evidence of me driving a few states over directly here, that they could prove to the police that I was the perpetrator and that I would go away for a long time, and that the people talking to me would get away scot-free. Hearing the voice tell me this so calmly, it really freaked me out. They had obviously planned this all out. They knew exactly what would happen. I knew that I had no chance. Who knows how many times they'd done this before me, with how prepared they were. They did give me another choice though. They told me that all I had to do was play ball. If I just did whatever they said, everything immediately, and put on a show for their audience is exactly what they said, then they would let me go, and that the police would never ever know. That I could drive home and live the rest of my life happy. I was hesitant, really hesitant. I wanted to just say no. I thought maybe I could just explain to the police, but when I tried to leave, they told me that if I did, they would kill the man, and that it would be all my fault. And so I had no choice but to stay. I didn't think there was any way the police would believe me over all of the evidence against me. I don't even remember half of it. I was in a daze and on autopilot most of the time, just trying not to think about the horrible things I was doing. I found out that they had left a box for me nearby. Tools to help with the job is what they told me. At first, it just started really weird. There was like this thing that was like a curled hand on a stick, like a back scratcher type thing, and they made me tickle him with it, both his arms and his feet. The men begged me just to let him go, in between each fit of laughter. I told him that I was sorry and that I was only doing this so that we both would not die. He spat on the floor at me. After that, it just kept escalating, and I don't want to go into too much horrible detail because I am ashamed of myself. They asked me to slap him, hard slaps, getting harder and harder each time, until eventually I was punching the man in the side of the head. I wanted to stop, but they told me that the deal would be off and that he would die if I did. I remember one punch I threw. I heard the man's jaw click and he tried screaming in pain, but it would only half come out. It was like he could not open up his mouth fully anymore, and he just sat there, drooling all over himself, making these groaning and moaning noises. But they were all slurred and muffled. After that, it just got worse and worse, but the threat of this man dying, I could not let that happen. They made me pull off his fingernails. I didn't even know how to do it properly. They had to give me a step-by-step guide, like some messed up torture instruction video. I spent most of the time accidentally stabbing this guy underneath his fingernails. I took 2 of them off before the guy actually passed out from pain. They then made me put a cloth over his mouth and pour water over his head until he woke back up and started trying and failing to scream once again. I only took off 1 more before the voice on the speaker told me that the audience was bored, that they needed me to spice it up. They told me to reach into the box and pull out the next tool. It was a knife, a massive fucking knife. If you've ever played Counter-Strike, it was like one of those big gut knife things, the one with the hook on the end. The voice told me I was going to have to make cuts in the man and draw some blood. I was done at this point. I could not do it anymore. If I made one wrong move, the man would lose way too much blood and die. I could not do this. I couldn't be responsible for him dying. I didn't even think. I just acted. I kind of just ran up to the man and started trying to release him and undo his chains. The worst part was that I did not even know how. I was sat there like an idiot, trying to cut the metal with the knife that I had in my hand, because my brain was just not working. I wasn't even thinking about whether the knife could cut chains. I was eventually able to get the cuffs off of his hands because they were really flimsy. I think they were made of plastic, and the chains were connected by something else. I actually managed to find an axe somewhere and managed to cut the chains off his legs. I was scared to do it, but I did. The whole time, the voice did not speak to me again. Neither did the man. I told him that he was free to go, and then grabbed him by the arm and pulled him out of the chair. I tried to tell him that I was sorry, to reassure him that I was only trying to help him, that I was sorry for everything I had to do, that I was getting him out of there. And when I did, he mumbled something and slurred his words while he threw a punch at me. It really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting him to do that at all. He caught me on my chin with the punch, and it made me fall onto my ass. It stung really, really badly. He grabbed me by the collar, and he punched me a couple of more times until my face was bleeding all over the floor, and then he ran away. I didn't even try to fight back. I didn't want to hurt this man any more than I already had. I thought that maybe if I punched him again, he might just die. I tried to explain to him while he was punching me, but he would not listen or even believe that I was not a part of all of this. He kept just slurring words at me, drooling all over the floor. At this point, I can hardly breathe. I'm winded and exhausted and panicking so hard. After that, the man ran off out of the room, and I heard his footsteps slowly disappear, and it did not help when a few minutes later, I heard a gunshot and a scream coming from somewhere else in the warehouse. I was panicking even harder now. It was the man who was just put in the chair. I heard his half scream become muffled, and I heard some people whispering and making a shushing sound. Now I was really freaked out. My brain was racing at a million thoughts a second. Were those people who were watching me? Were they already here, or did they just turn up now? I had no idea. A few more minutes later, that door flies open, and that man is being dragged across the ground. He has some gauze taped to his leg, with blood completely staining it. There were about 4 men that walked into that room. They were all wearing white masks. I don't know what they were made out of. Think of those masks that Anonymous wear, but a different face, and they looked higher quality. They were all wearing these dark robes too, with some kind of a red pattern sewed into them. They dragged this man over to the chair, hoisted him up, and then tied him up again, but with rope this time. They put the blindfold back on him before turning their attention back to me. They beat me for a while. They called me stupid. They asked me why I would break their deal like that they made it so easy for me to go home without any consequences whatsoever. They told me that I did not have a choice anymore, that the deal had been changed. They told me that I messed up and that they were not going to make it easy anymore, that they were going to stay and supervise me. They must have been here the whole time. I never heard any cars pull up outside or any other noise like that, but I suppose I was quite deep in there. Maybe I wouldn't hear it. I'm sorry. I don't even want to go into much more detail. I feel a great sense of guilt and shame. They made me torture him even more while they laughed and talked to the camera, like they were the hosts of some stupid messed up game show. They were just making stupid jokes. They made me do some horrible things that I don't even want to remember. This time, they told me that if I did not follow the rules immediately when they said, that they would put me in the chair and let this guy torture me and kill me. I did not want that to happen. I had to do what they said. I had no choice. After what must have been an hour or two, they told me that they were bored, that the show was finally over. One of them pulled out a gun from underneath his robes. He did not even say a word to me. I thought I was going to die right then and there. But then he came over to me and shoved the gun into my hands and made me hold it. He forced me to move my hands upwards, pointing the gun at the man, and then he told me to stay still. He told me to shoot him. I shook my head and I was sobbing at this point. The man walked over to me and he grabbed my hands and he pulled the trigger himself while I was holding the gun. The man died on the spot. It was horrible. All I remember after this is a few of them taking the body somewhere and packing away the camera and the speaker. And then there I was on the floor, just begging for my life, sobbing really, really hard. I was begging them not to kill me, promising them that I would not say a word, that I would just go home and stay quiet forever. They stood around for a while and whispered to each other. Then they told me that if I ever went to the police, talked about it to anyone, or told anyone on that forum, that they would send all of the evidence that they had to the police, and that I would get life in prison for the murder of the man in the chair. They told me that they would be watching, and that if I ever did a single thing that they did not like, that the deal was over, and that I was done. I was just sobbing the whole entire time. I think I actually lost control of my bladder when the man in the chair died. They told me I had to wait there for an hour before I was allowed to leave, that they were leaving first. So I sat and I waited. I tried not to remember what happened or what I did. I was paranoid that at any point I might get a knock on my door from the cops and that my life would be over. I deleted everything on my computer and left it in a scrapyard for someone to take away. I stopped talking to my friend who showed me that forum immediately. I don't think he even ever sent me a message to try and reach out. I don't know if he knew anything about what happened, if he knew about that forum. I didn't even try to find out. I dropped out of university, and that was it. My dad was angry and disappointed, and so I ended up moving away for a few years to live with my grandmother in Italy. I never got into any trouble or any visits from the cops. I never got any weird messages from anyone over the years. I've worked a job over here for the last however long, and I do not want to go back. Only problem is, my dad wants me back there. He says he cannot wait any longer to train me up, otherwise it will be too late. I am so scared. I don't know what's going to happen. I never want to go anywhere near there ever again. I don't think I will ever be able to get a full night's sleep or be able to live with myself ever again. I remember once, me and two cousins, we were getting drunk on one of my cousin's property. It's worthwhile to mention that cousin one, we'll call him Rod, and I work in landscaping. We are fit enough to hold our own. And cousin too, we'll call him Irv, is in the army as a grunt. At around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we decided to get off of our wasted asses and go hunting for small game. This is nothing new. We occasionally go outside hunting small game, half-wasted, but 2 weeks prior to this, another hunting party came back, asking us if we lost our dog, describing it as a large black dog. They say it kept its distance, but followed them around for a solid hour before they had had enough. We didn't really care as the property was vast, and it could have been someone's hunting dog for all we knew. By this point, we had completely forgotten all about the dog, and we started our hunt like any other day. All in all, it was normal. That was until about 8 o'clock, when the sun had been going down. At this point, we're still kinda tipsy, but we're sane enough to recall everything. We had shot off a few rounds, killing snakes or bullfrogs, but nothing more. For some reason, we found the forest more silent than usual. We didn't really care, and settled ourselves in a clearing that overlooked a shallow river, no more than 20 feet wide and 8 feet deep. We stayed here, picking off bullfrogs for a while. That is until Rod heard something moving in the brush. At this time, the sun had been down for roughly 10 minutes. Nothing more than the faint glow of sunset passed by, and the moon was now shining above. We thought maybe that now was our chance to get a quick bite to eat. We moved quietly out to the clearing to see around the bush to see what was behind, and to everyone's dismay, we saw nothing. We thought that whatever it was had just gotten away. We thought nothing of it as we lingered in the clearing for a little while longer. That was until Rod saw a bigger animal in the distance. Turning around, we saw that a good distance away, maybe 50 feet away, this big animal was there. But by the way it had been treading so close, we knew it was trying to avoid detection, stalking, if you will. We still do not really care, and lingered in the clearing for a little bit longer, until at around 9, when it was outright dark, and we were using flashlights to illuminate our way. We finally had enough, and decided to head back. That is when Rod says, "Hey, you guys go on for a bit. I'm gonna stay back and piss. I will catch up." So we left him while he watered the plants. About 30 seconds later, we hear him scream in terror as he catches up to us. Me and Irv turn around and ask what the hell he was shrieking about. He still hadn't even pulled his pants up. His dick was just flapping in the wind. Breathless and terrified, he said that when he finished taking a piss, he saw what seemed to be a big black dog come out from around a tree, no more than a few yards away. And with it, came out this ghostly growl that seemed to have come from all directions. He is easily spooked and slightly tipsy, so we thought he was making stuff up, so we tried to get him to calm down. Looking back, we saw nothing. We were about an hour's walk away from his place. The whole time he was nervous and had the feeling of being stalked. I felt being watched too, but I thought maybe it was just paranoia finally getting the better of me. At some point, he turns around and lets go of the same frightened scream as earlier. We turn around, and sure enough we saw the black dog he mentioned earlier. It was pretty far off, barely in the reach of our flashlight's view, but we could see it pretty clearly. Something about it seemed off. A deep dark coat is all I could manage to see. No other features, other than that this fucker was really big. We thought it was a stray that had been long forgotten, so we smacked some sense into Rod and told him to get a hold of himself. Managing that, we trekked in a little further. Rod was still jerking his head back constantly, checking for the animal. Not even a minute in, curiosity got the better of me, and I turned around as well, shining my light exactly to see where it was. This is where I lost my shit. In less than 1 minute, this thing managed to halve the distance between us without making a single sound. Irv turned around and was also bothered by this, almost as if it was a cardboard cutout that stayed in place. Its shadow stretched all the way back into the forest. This is what bothered me immensely. The shadow was way too big for how big this thing was. Irv fired the first shot at the beast, but nothing happened. It did not move or even react. We cracked jokes at each other, saying he's too drunk to handle the rifle, to which he said, "Okay, you take a shot." Trying to resolve the situation, I did so, and aligned my scope for a heart shot. Let me say that under normal circumstances, I am not a bad shot, and I know exactly how to place a round, and at what distance I need, under what conditions. I know I could not have missed, but sure enough, it was almost like I shot at thin air. This is where Rod lost his shit and emptied a clip into the animal. 10.22 rounds emptied in 5 seconds. Nothing. No reaction. At this point we were all freaking out, so we turned around and jogged back to his place. Rod managed to drop his rifle after no more than 10 seconds of jogging, to which we all turned around, watching him pick it back up. In doing so, he managed to shine the light back on the trail, and I swear, I've never been so terrified in my entire life. This thing was no more than 6 feet away. It looked as though it were ready to strike. How this animal could manage to close a distance of 20 feet in less than 10 seconds without making a single sound is beyond me. At this moment, we all bailed. All 3 of us full sprint, leaving the rifles behind, not looking back at all. The entire time, I swore I heard panting and growling getting closer and closer. We wasted no time, as Irv and I hopped into the back of Rod's pickup and bailed. I swore as soon as I jumped up the truck, I heard this distorted bark. It was so dark and eerie, unlike any bark I've ever heard. It could easily pass as demonic. We spent the night at my place, trying to gather our wits and how to go back and get the rifle the following day. This was 2 years ago now, and we never went back. We were way too scared.